Tonight, our speaker is Cris Sarabia, the president of the California Native Plant Society. And Cris, we thank you so much for being willing to share with us and join us in this Zoom meeting tonight. We hear frequently updates about what's happening in Texas with native plants, but tonight we're going further afield to see what someone else is doing, and we look forward to hearing. So welcome to Texas.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Carol, and the Cross Timbers chapter, as well as the whole Native Plant Society of Texas. It's great to be here with one of our sister groups, and I think we'll see that we're doing a lot of similar work, and there's probably a lot of overlap. I'm sure we can potentially work together on different strategies and different projects in the future. So I guess I'll take it from here. Let's see. So yeah, as shared, my name is Cris Sarabia. I am the president of the board of directors for the state group of CNPS. I'm also the vice president of our South Coast chapter, which covers the Los Angeles area. And so well, I'll get into that, but I just want to share our mission first. So the mission is to conserve California native plants and their natural habitats and increase understanding, appreciation, and the horticultural use of native plants. We envision a future in which Californians actively support the society's mission. This is accomplished through education, plant science, advocacy, land stewardship, and native plant gardening. California's value native plants, plant communities, and healthy ecosystems as essential to the well-being of all living things. We also envision a future in which Californians can experience native plants throughout the state in natural environments as well as human man-made landscapes. We also envision an extensive and interconnected natural habitat as they're preserved. And we want to be a leader in providing reliable information on California native plants, plant conservation, be a comprehensive information hub about California's flora and vegetation communities. And lastly, we want to be make sure that our leadership influences personal ethics and actions, as well as public policy for native plant protection. So I know that's a mouthful. And so, back to our mission, this is our elevator spiel. So we usually have lots of pretty pictures because we have a lot of beautiful native plants. And back to the mission, we're dedicated to conserving California native plants and their natural habitats, and also increasing the understanding, enjoyment, and horticultural use of native plants, as well as restoring nature one garden at a time. And so this butterfly here, this is a El Segundo blue butterfly. It's a rare butterfly in my area in the South Coast region. And it's on a buckwheat, a coastal dune buckwheat, and that's its host plant. And it grows on coastal bluffs, and people like beautiful views, right? And people like to build homes on the coast. So this butterfly is very rare. We also have an airport that was built, LAX airport. Many of you have probably flown into it. And that was actually one of the main habitats for this butterfly. So it's in limited numbers of population. And so, there's a lot of homes out there. And so this last, little tidbit of restoring nature one garden at a time versus, the bigger conservation approach. It's our appeal to people who may not be conservationists or may not work in the restoration field or, in land management or any of those fields, right? They might not be botanists or horticulturalists, but they may have a garden and they may like flowers and may like to see butterflies come by. And so we want to involve those people as well. The other day, I was listening to a presentation by Doug Tallamy. Maybe some of you know of Doug Tallamy. And he was saying how in Texas, what was the story? That, there was a drought, and you have your own monarch migration route, and that during that drought, a lot of milkweed was not flowering, as very limited numbers. But what kept those monarchs going on their migration route was the milkweed planted throughout people's homes, throughout people's gardens, the nectar provided by those plants. And so I thought that was really interesting, because I had not heard of that. And I asked him, I said, oh, where's that data? He said, there's so little data on this, because, migrations happen fairly quickly. Droughts, we're kind of working through them, but there is some info out there. And so I thought that was a really good connection between the two groups, is that, saving large landscapes is important, but also educating the public on what they can do in their own gardens. And so, we are California Native Plant Society, or for short, CNPS. We're a diverse mix of scientists, gardeners, students, conservationists, and horticulture experts. And so together, we're each doing our part to save and celebrate California's incredible native plant heritage. We have 35 chapters, which I just learned you also do too. We have over 10,000 members. And at this moment, we have about over 30 staff, but that's growing. We've really expanded from when I think it was just a handful of staff, under 5 staff members. Now we're at 30 plus. And so that's quite an amount of resources to be putting into plants, right? Into, these beautiful landscapes, or at least we see them as beautiful. And so, there's a reason we put that many resources into this. And one reason is California is a very unique Mediterranean climate. And so there's 5 in the world. Well, ours is the one that receives the least amount of rainfall. And so you see a pattern here, right, in the map with the longitude, and they're all kind of facing west. And what happens with California is, we have drought deciduous plants, and so our plants rest during the hot, dry summer and early fall. And so, also being the one of these 5 receiving the least amount of rainfall makes us very special. And so, with that, we have a unique climate. So we have more native plants than any other state of the nation because of that. And we have 1/3 of our plants are found nowhere else on the earth. And so this makes us a really, really big biodiversity hotspot for the nation. And despite already losing over 70% of native habitat, we're still a very high biodiversity hotspot. So that's one reason we put so many resources and attention and care and love and sweat and tears into the work we do. And so what I'm going to talk about today is some of our programs, and I'll touch on them because we have a lot of programs going on, and a lot of them overlap. You'll see that they may be going in different directions, but they tend to overlap, which creates a really tight staff and volunteer group, because we are all in each other's business, because it all is connected. And so you might hear me repeat a couple things across programs, but it's for a reason. This beautiful picture here, I believe, is in Antelope Valley. And so this is our poppy fields. This year we didn't have much rain, so there's not as many poppies, but one thing we do celebrate is when we have these years of just massive wildflowers. And so, those are years that we really have to go out and educate people to kind of show them that this is what we're protecting, that may be lying dormant in the ground. This is why these areas are so important, and why plants are important, and why we should, give them their space and work with them if possible. So let me get into the programs. Our first program is vegetation. And so this is kind of one of our longest running programs. And I'll touch on it because it's such a huge program. I really encourage you to go to our website and read more about it in detail. But one of the bigger things that the vegetation program is doing is a statewide inventory and mapping. And this is important. And I'll read this straight off our website, where we don't save individual plant species in isolation. Plants belong to communities playing foundational roles in our ecosystem. Our understanding of those relationships are critical to both conservation and science. The CNPS vegetation program has established a vegetation classification system that has become the standard for interpreting statewide vegetation patterns and for initiating local and regional ecological assessments. Today, the program continues to expand this knowledge to inform conservation and land use planning amidst today's critical decisions. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And it's really hard to explain in a small presentation because it's such a big program and there's a lot going on, but I will try. And so we do have, there's a beautiful picture. And what we're really doing is through the use of field sampling, fine scale mapping, and map verification of vegetation and different types of habitats, all across California, we're creating an inventory and mapping as much as we can so that we know where things are at and we know what needs to be protected. And we're aware of things that may have been there or may be there and we may not be seeing them in case something goes on in that area. So there is a lot of risk of development in some of these areas that may look barren, may look dry, may just look like a desert wasteland to some, but they're important in other ways. And so we work closely with other groups. We actually work closely with the Bureau of Land Management in some of these desert areas. We are mapping over 1 million acres using aerial information systems. We have a program called CNPS for BLM. So we work closely in mapping some of those BLM areas. And what we do is we actually share all this data on something called BIOS Online, BIOS Online. You may be aware of it or you may not. And if you're not, check it out. It's a database and it's open source, it's free, and you're able to really access maps, data of everything that we're collecting as well as others. And so we kind of do this vegetation mapping all across different counties, all across different ranges, Modoc Plateau and the basin. What else? You know, in that area, we're doing over 2 million acres. We work with the different wildlife agencies, such as California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We work with university geography students. And we do a lot of flyovers and use remote sensing technology to do a lot of this work. And so, you know, this is part of the work we do so that we know where things are at and we can protect them. Something we've gotten into a little more is post-fire vegetation sampling. And so we have a grant that has allowed us to do some of that work. And you'll see that across a couple of our programs, we are kind of addressing that and trying to figure out what's going on after fires, because California is fire prone and our vegetation communities are somewhat adapted to fire. And so we see very interesting vegetation come up after a fire. But if we don't get data in those periods post-fire, we typically don't get that data ever again unless there's another fire. So it's a very unique year, last year and this year. And so we're doing a lot of fire mapping, as you'll see. What else? We are doing a lot of long-term monitoring of vegetation. And so we've set up transects and plots in some of these areas, such as the Carrizo Plain, such as the Redwoods in Santa Cruz County. And I realize this is a Texas group, so I won't talk too much about areas you may not know. Just know that these areas, though, are kind of like this picture here, and they're, you know, there's wild areas, beautiful hiking and interesting climate and weather patterns. And so I did mention, you know, if you go to our website, you can learn a little bit more. And so just at the top there, you see some of the stories about some of these mapping and monitoring projects that we're working on and that you can learn more about, because they're kind of interesting. You know, there's not a lot of monitoring plots in wild areas like this, and especially in these very diverse areas where you might see wildflower flush, you know, every 10 years. I just wanted to share that. So that's part of the monitoring. We also put out the Manual of California Vegetation. And so Julie Evans, who runs our vegetation program, she put this together with some others, and it's basically a definitive system for describing vegetation statewide. So it uses a principal unit called an alliance. And so this basically defines vegetation type by the dominant or characteristic species. So this is actually available online. If you didn't want to purchase, you know, this 10-pound book, it's a beautiful. I think it's a beautiful book. Actually, it might resemble a Bible in where there's not many pictures and you know, there's small print, but it's chock full of information about vegetation communities and which plant groups exist where. And so we're currently updating this, and this is a, you know, a big undertaking. But, you know, we're just updating 20 alliances and adding a couple more as we learn more about the different habitat types out in the wild. And so this is, you know, this is an essential tool that people use in California. I don't know if they use it in other states because it's specific to the California vegetation we have. But I think the system of describing vegetation could be used in other places, and there might be books out there that I'm just not aware of. So feel free to check that out on our website. Next, I'm going to go into our rare plant program. And so there's quite a few projects, but I'll touch on a couple. We do have a rare plant inventory database, which we are updating. So if you look on the top right, you know, it looks like an old DOS, almost DOS, like Windows, you know, typical database that you may have used back in college. I know I used to use something like this. I think I still have something on my computer. We're trying to make it a little more, a little basically catching up to the times, and something that can live in the cloud as well, so that it's accessible to most, especially if you're doing work out in the field or in a remote area, but you still have Wi-Fi, or, you know, if you are in somewhere in California where maybe you don't have access to someone's server with the data on it. Now you can access it on the CNPS website. And this is big because it's kind of been an old program that hasn't been updated in a long time. And so we're almost complete with the new version. It should be out in the next couple weeks to months. And we're just testing it, making sure it works. But just, you know, playing around in there and looking at different species and different, you know, different plants that you have the genus in Texas. It's very interesting to see which plants are rare, where they're at, what they're doing, and what notes might be on there. And so with that, we're also updating pictures because, you know, some people need a picture in there. Sure, we describe our plants in our Jepson manual, which is what we use, or key it out in other ways. But something we're working on is there's another platform called Cal Photos that people submit their beautiful photography of flowers and plants. And so we're basically crosswalking it and cross-referencing and adding that to the inventory. So that should really help out in enabling a bigger database, a stronger database, and making sure that those associations of plant photos with the plant name, with the plant variety, subspecies, whatever it is, making sure that people have that access. And so same thing, we're almost, it's in the works. We have a lot of projects, but it's in the works, and it's if there's people out there actually in Texas that want to help out, we're always looking for volunteers to help in these type of projects. And so you can email me and I can forward you the information on how to work through that. So we have a lot going on with the Rare Plant Program. So I'll just kind of cruise through it, where, with the online inventory, we're always doing status reviews for our plants. And so we've added new taxa. We've changed some of these rare plant records in this database. And one of the databases is called the California Natural Diversity Database. And so basically we're just kind of staying on top of it and making sure that new plants are updated, just like this grass on the right, or actually it's a sedge, pointed broom sedge, Cowscape variety Scoparia. This was recently rediscovered. It was presumed extinct, rediscovered by Jim Belcher Howell in Plumas County. And so we have to update it, right? It's no longer an extinct species that we have in our database. It's still out there. Maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe there's some populations of it somewhere else. So these are the things we're doing to make sure that people are understanding what's going on out there in the world, in California, and making sure that the data's out there. Because heck, if I didn't share this, maybe someone out there that knows the Cowscape wouldn't have known that it was rediscovered, right? You wouldn't have that information. So we want to make that data accessible to all. So like I said, we're working on the database to make sure this stuff is accessible to all. It should be rolling out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, if we don't hit any snags. And this is a lot of this stuff. We do have staff, but we do rely on volunteers. So we have a rare plant status reviewer form that gets used that anybody can sign up for. You got to go through some training, but anybody can sign up for it. And if I'll keep an eye on the chat, but if you guys can give me a time check, I think I should be done by what time? I think it's by 6:15. Is that, sorry, 5:15 my time?
We're showing 7 o'clock here, so you have plenty of time left.
Great. Okay, just want to make sure I'm respecting everyone's time. So something else we've been working on is let's see here. We have something called rare plant treasure hunts. And what we do with these rare plant treasure hunts is we bring the community out, people that have an interest in plants, maybe just have an interest in nature, and we train them, and then we go out and look for rare plants in an area that rare plants maybe were spotted historically. And so this last fiscal year, we did about 100 rare plant treasure hunts. And this is a really great way to get the community involved, to get them to own, kind of own these areas, to protect them, to keep an eye on them, and to also, they're the boots on the ground that are also going to keep an eye out for those rare plants in the future. And maybe there'll be maybe the rare plant doesn't show up for a couple of years, but these people are revisiting it because now they know what they're looking for, what existed there, and what might still be in the ground as a seed. And so, we've been doing these for a long time, but we've really ramped it out. We have Amy Patton here who does the trainings. And this year with the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of online trainings, which it's not the same, but we're actually reaching more people in that way and getting more people trained, and having more participants. And so that's one of the ways we get the community involved in some of this work. So we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep looking for funding to basically create this community science program, and keep it going throughout California. Because in the end, if you're not, involving the community, you can only get so far. I mentioned there's 30 plus staff, but California is huge. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that people are really owning it. Some rare plant surveys that we've been doing as well are in burn areas. And so I mentioned this earlier, we had some fires. Well, right now we're in a once in a lifetime situation and opportunity to record unusual fire followers and find new populations, and in range restricted areas, and so Fritillaria, Lomadium, different penstemons, that's what we're looking for. And so in some of these areas where we had lightning fires, we're out there and taking data. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's also a community effort. Something we were a part of, and I don't know if you all were a part of, was a City Nature Challenge this year. And so we did overlap some of our projects with the City Nature Challenge. And Fire Followers was one of the big campaigns. And so it's important. It's important to get the community involved. So I was looking up Texas earlier, but I couldn't find exactly where the data was for the City Nature Challenge. But if you're not involved, I suggest you do get involved with the iNaturalist app, because we're using it for a lot of our projects. There is something called the California Plant Rescue that we're working on. And so what it is we're basically seed banking as much as we can, as part of this project. In long story short, it's a huge project with a lot of partners. And so in 2020, we seed banked about 49 taxa, but and that's considering the pandemic, where we had limited resources to go out and limited amount of volunteers. And so this next year we're going to continue to work with a lot of the herbariums, the botanic gardens, state parks, National Park Service, some of these park districts, water districts, the U.S. Forest Service. They're all partners in this California Plant Rescue. It's a very unique collaborative in saving California's plants. So, we just had a lifting of restrictions in California today. And so this may allow us to go out and safely collect more of these taxa, so that we do have a seed bank that can exist in perpetuity, and that we can use that for different projects in the future. And so we also, as part of this project, we also got funding for seed processing equipment. And so a lot of the seed processing is now going in-house, and we have that capacity. And we, working with interns, we're actually training them on seed processing. So we see it as a huge investment to the native plant world, where these people are getting trained and then going out and getting jobs and being highly skilled and being able to continue the work in their future endeavors. And, also they get these huge skills that you don't really find in too many places. So that's part of the California Plant Rescue. A lot of rare plants are collected on that, which training goes along with how to collect rare plants. And the last thing with that project is that we're also including high quality images of these native seeds, particularly rare species of seeds, just because there's very limited pictures of seeds out there. And I've experienced it where someone's like, oh, here, I clean these seeds, and they're actually a pupa of a caterpillar, of a butterfly. And, to the naked eye, we're like, well, it looks like the seed because the seed just looked just like it. But, we didn't have a reference. So using high quality imagery, it can really help out in in the work we do out in the field. Let's see. So something else we've been working on with the Rare Plant Program is we have a partnership with different groups, different indigenous groups down here in the Udom River. And so as part of a settlement that we worked on with some of these indigenous groups, we did have a litigation against the development. And so we were awarded quite a chunk of money to conserve the biological and cultural resources. And so, you know, bringing our skills to the table and assisting these indigenous groups, we've started some of that work. And so it's pretty interesting to see that some of this land that's never been surveyed has so many rare plants on it in the Udom River. And so we've started to learn to maneuver and work together with indigenous groups in the area, because it's key, right? Once again, it goes back to the community, especially if these are their tribal lands. You want to work with them and you want to assist them because essentially they're their lands. We're just there as guests. So many rare plants have been documented so far, and that's just with the drop in the bucket of the funds received so far. So we hope to really get a really good inventory of this area, and that would have been developed, and collect seed, you know, as part of the California Plant Rescue, but also kind of map and document how these plants grow, their alliances, their vegetation communities, and all of that. I guess one of the last projects we're working on that I'll talk about is the Local Floras Project. And so this is a new program that we're working on. And what we're trying to do is create a flora for every California county without a published flora. And so there's a lot of data out there, but it has to get put together. So what we're doing is we're working with different partners, different volunteers, and then working with all the universities, colleges that have herbaria, and working to support them in creating these floras. So working with interns, working with students, and basically going through the floristic documents, the research, getting all that together, getting young botanists involved and teaching them the skills so that we can put this data together, and then also conduct floristic surveys for these counties. And so it's a huge undertaking because we have 58 counties in California, and floras can be pretty hefty, but it's it gives us opportunities because some plants may be rare in a certain county. They may not be listed as rare for the state, but in certain counties, they may only have one population there. So those are important. And those are things we need to note and document. So as part of this local flora project, we also have a locally rare plants project. So, you know, we have people who are highly dedicated to rare plants as part of an advisory group, working with those students, working with Cnps to put this all together. And so I'm not sure how long it'll take, but you know, it's key. We need floras for all the counties so that we know what's out there and what to look for. So that's one of the last projects. And I keep mentioning, go to the website under our Rare Plant Program. You'll see a lot more information on some of the rare plant work we're doing. The next program that I will be discussing is the Biodiversity Initiatives. And so the Biodiversity Initiatives, it's a fairly new program, but there's a lot going on because that's a big umbrella. So some of the work we're doing is with writing up proceedings and a white paper on genetic considerations for restoration. We had a symposium back in October of 2020, and that's actually available online if anybody wants to watch it. But very good information on why genetics are important in restoration, you know, seed source, things like that. And so we're putting that together for our next issue of our journal, previously called Fremontia. And so, which I'll talk about our publications in a bit. So we're working on that. We're also working on a native plant certification with different graduate students as part of this program. Where we're pushing through and kind of working with a very volunteer-led group on advocating for native plants and landscaping. So this is an interesting approach that will overlap with horticulture, which I will go into next. But yeah, it goes back to our butterfly, right? Our monarchs, our El Segundo blue butterfly. Native plants and landscaping does make a difference. So we're kind of working through that project. We had a re-oak program that was started after all the fires we had a couple years ago. And what happened was a lot of oaks burned. So we got into gear, collected oaks from those areas to make sure that we had a seed bank that was appropriate to put back into these areas that were burnt, because what we found was that people, saw the oaks gone and we're going out to the stores and just buying or ordering seed from anywhere for any oak. And understanding the ecology and the ecosystem is key. So we decided to step in and assist those people with the proper oaks, with the proper genetics, and providing oaks to them for replanting these areas that were burnt. So we're re-envisioning that re-oak project because that was a huge undertaking. It was very reactive. And so we're still working through it. It's an interesting program that you might want to follow because there's a lot of publicity behind it because everyone likes to plant trees. But we have a bigger intention in mind with the ecology of what oaks bring to the landscape and all that follows with it, right? All the different birds and pollinators that lay eggs on oaks and all that. So that's part of that. And then we have, once again, our fire follower program. And so we hired someone, a community science coordinator that specifically is working with the fire follower program. And really the intention of this is to look at those burned areas and understand pyrodiversity. So pyrodiversity is key because we don't always have that opportunity to look at what is growing in some of these areas after the landscape burns. So we're documenting that. And, so far we've had over 4,000 observations throughout these burn sites. And that's 780 species that are coming in after some of these burn sites, after some of these fires. So we're gathering the data. We're still in the process. I'm sure this number has changed since I took a screenshot of it. And this is on iNaturalist. So it allows anyone to go out and be a part of this project. And that's back to that community component where we want help. We want to get future botanists involved and really just work with the community because that's our strongest ally in this. I go back to the 10,000 members that CNPS has and how we have 35 chapters. Well, those are all volunteer led. And so we, just like the Texas Native Plant Society, we kind of have that same idea where volunteers can really make the big difference and assist staff in doing some of these projects. So the next program I will touch on is the horticulture program. So I don't know if the Native Plant Society of Texas has chapter plant sales, but we do. With our 35 chapters, I think about half have native plant sales. And with the pandemic, we had basically a hurdle to overcome where we couldn't have in-person plant sales. So we all got together and figured out how to do online native plant sales with contactless pickup. Some actually had delivery options as well. But the staff on the state level assisted all the chapters that were having plant sales on how to set up these websites with our local species and how to make sales, and then we were able to still raise up funds from our usual plant sale. Our chapter made the same amount of money we would have made without this online service. So it was a great way to continue forward, and it sounds like we're still going to continue doing this as an option, because it does alleviate the bringing cash and having to deal with customers when you're having a native plant sale. So we're going to see how it goes this year and see what native plant sales may look like in a hybridized world. We've had so taking a step back, the horticulture program is huge. It's one of my favorite programs just because it does involve people. And so, sorry here, looking at some of the questions, but we have, with the pandemic, we created a webinar education series because a lot of us were stuck in our homes and still wanting to learn more, still wanting to get engaged. And so if you go to our YouTube, you'll see all these different programs we put out over the last year. And they're amazing programs. If you were to take a look at some, one of those programs was our Naturehood Gardening. And so every month we're putting out different videos. So far, we've put out container gardening and rental home gardening, which had 600 plus registrants. So it just shows the interest is there, especially with people being at home more and being behind their computers or TVs. We have also had habitat gardening, 360 garden tours, which I'll show you in a second what that looks like. In August, we're going to have our school and community garden webinar, which, it's perfect timing for when kids are going back to school. September, we have an edible plant program. And then in December, this last December, we had it. So we're going to do it again. It was a great hit. It was a holiday wreath. So using native plants. And we had a big a contest, and you could probably find it on our YouTube video. Amazing wreaths came in. I think you should check it out. And it was just this really fun contest to kind of get people involved. And we also had a bonsai webinar. Actually, no, we're having a bonsai webinar, my mistake, in June. So just, if you go to the YouTube, you'll see all these beautiful videos that have been put out by our communication staff. And you really learn a lot, and you really have a diverse community representation on there. So we will continue with that. And I think it's a great opportunity for all. Let's see here. So we do have something called Cowscape. Cowscape is a website that we send people to as a resource for trying to figure out what plants grow well in your home. And so you basically type in your address, and a list of plants comes out, and you can narrow that search down by, do you have shade, full sun? Are you looking for a ground cover? What are you looking for? Easy maintenance? And it's a really interesting resource that we're constantly updating and getting more data in there. But what we started to do is also train the nurseries on the other end, these nursery professionals, to be more involved in this website. So we're really trying to set up that funnel of, vendor versus customer. And so far we've had 120 plus nursery professionals participate. So we hope to really increase that, so that there's an educational component for the nurseries that may have never sold native plants a couple years ago, but also really get them involved and let them know that it's not that hard to sell native plants or grow them, and that it's really a wave of the future. Along those lines is we've also started a landscaper training in English and Spanish, because what we found was that people are installing native plant gardens, but there's no one skilled, or no one has been taught how to maintain these native plant gardens. And so we've been offering these classes for free to the community of landscapers and really giving them all the resources they need in a series of classes, as well as cheat sheets and all these materials, so that they do know how to maintain these. And it gives them an upper hand, but it also keeps these landscapes looking beautiful as they were intended to be. You know, and in the end, we were funded by the Department of Water and Power, because they see it as a win-win, because people are using less water and less resources. So it's a great partnership throughout. We also have another program called the Long Beach Parkway program. And I live here in Long Beach, California. And this was a great program that we put together with the water department. Once again, another win-win, because people use less water on native plants. And so they're sponsoring these kits that they give to people for parkways to create native plant parkways that are beneficial to our pollinators, right? They save water, and they're easy to maintain. And so we're reaching about 100 parkways in this, you know, it's fairly small city in comparison. It does have its own water department. And so this is a great program that we hope to get replicated by other water departments. I will mention that, you know, we've been working with different water departments, and the way in which we got connected with them is a couple years ago, we had our conservation conference. We have a conservation conference every couple years, every 3 years. Postponed this last year because of the pandemic, but next year we're going to have it. I highly suggest you attend, even if it is digitally. But we invited them and created basically a whole session designed for municipalities and water districts. And they came and they were blown away. And we offered our resources. And, you know, the outcome has been this amazing connection between all these bigger agencies that are looking for solutions, that are looking to be more sustainable. They're looking to conserve. We offered those solutions to them, and a lot of them bit, and a lot of them are still working with us. And it creates a great resource, because they have funding and we have the knowledge. And here we go. We got the Long Beach Water Department Parkway program. We have the Landscaper Certification program, and on and on and on. And so I suggest, you know, reach out and understand how we did that. And it was a very strategic move that really worked. I don't know if we offered it for free, but anyway, I think it's a great way to connect. Another program we're working on is we got a grant for specialty crop blocks. And so this is from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And it's we're calling it the Bloom campaign or Grow Native campaign. And what it is we are pushing 11 crops of native plants that were selected for promotion. And so these are some of the plants that might be the easiest, the most beautiful, the least to maintain. And we're pushing these into the market and really working with, you know, the retail, the growers, and promoting and really carefully pushing these crops that are really going to make a difference out in the California landscape. So it's hard to get into the details, but I suggest you look at it, because it's an interesting approach that's sponsored by, you know, by the agencies, because they see the benefits of pushing these crops through, where they may use less herbicides or pesticides. And it's a win-win in the end. Once again, native plants provide pollination, provide less use of water, especially in California, we're in a drought. And so it's a great program that we're working through. And it ties into this next one, where back to our Cowscape program, we've had assistance as part of that specialty crop block grant to create these designs. And so if you go to Cowscape and play around in there, you'll notice there's a Cowscape garden planner. And what it is it provides these really basic garden plans for you. They look beautiful, right? These are all professionally made. And so it provides you with a design for your home, and how to plant, and something that you can hand over to your landscaper or your landscape architect to integrate into the project or whatever, even for your own, reference. This is a beautiful design put together with native plants. And so this is kind of part of that horticulture program that we've been working on, and to really get more and more people involved. Next, I'm going to go into the education program. And so our education program has been kind of on pause for a couple years, and we're looking to revitalize it. And so last week we had a big fundraiser. It's a California style fundraiser where nonprofits get together and really push to raise funds. It's called Big Day of Giving. We were able to raise over $50,000 specifically for our education program. And so with that money, we're looking to hire an education coordinator and really revamp this program, because education is key, and it's something we've been missing for a while. While we used to have an education program in the past and put out a lot of great documents for teachers to use and for students to use, we really want to continue with that, because it's a great way to create a love and understanding for native plants. It creates a bridge to our core mission, right, which is native plant conservation, advocacy, and horticulture. It basically creates these relationships with native plants. And so something our staff did, was create this white sage education program. It's for primary school, and we created this curriculum alongside with our local Tongva indigenous tribe. Tongva is the Los Angeles original indigenous group, and their territory is in Los Angeles. And so we worked closely with them with this, very special plant, white sage, and kids. And so we created a curriculum for these elementary school children, and they were able to really discuss habitat, discuss respective indigenous cultures, human impacts on the natural world, understand their science, because they each received a plant. And if you notice in this picture in the background, they're all proud of their little plant growing. And, so they learn their science, they learn how to grow plants, they learn propagation. And so there's all these different factors in there connected to white sage, a very sacred plant that is actually, potentially we're losing a lot of it. There's people out there poaching it because it gets sold in stores as an incense. And so there's a lot of bridges of interest here, and also out of respect for the indigenous cultures that use white sage for ceremony. So this program is kind of a first step in us seeing, there is a need, there is a connection, and we can work together to create the next set of stewards for native plants, because these kids are going to have native plants as their baseline of information and understand, what a white sage is, a black sage, California sagebrush, all these different plants that they're going to learn about. It's going to be part of their information. And these are the kids that are going to steward and take care of these lands and conserve everything that we're trying to conserve. So it's a great program. And with our new education coordinator, I think we're really going to get a long way. So keep an eye on that. So our next step is to do 10 schools in the fall of 2021 and keep expanding on that. So the next thing, and I think I'm still good with time. So we do have our campaigns and engagement group. And so something we've been working on is Dudleya legislation. And so we worked with a legislator and introduced AB 223, which basically outlines explicit penalties for the poaching of wild Dudley in California. It sounds maybe to you, it sounds a little weird, but we had a big surge of poaching of Dudleya species. I'll share a picture of what a Dudleya looks like. And so we lost a lot of Dudleya out in the wild. So what this bill does is makes a pointed effort to stop the illegal harvesting of these native succulents. And, you know, these were all removed from many coastline and valleys in shocking numbers. So as the bill makes its way through the legislative cycle, we're driving an education advocacy campaign. And so we've created these Dudleya mascots for our different chapters with Dudleyas. And they're, you know, they're just kind of fun, right? And it's to engage a wider audience, develop a suite of chapter-specific Dudleyas. So these are all different species of Dudleya. And these cute characters serve as ambassadors for the messaging for Dudleya that we're trying to put across. So what we've been doing is sharing fun facts about the genus of Dudleya, as well as providing updates on the legislation. So we're going to continue with that and hope it makes it through. Luckily we have a champion in legislation that is helping us get through this because Dudleya is a very special plant. I mentioned the Fire Follower program. So we've been coming out with these cool graphics. You know, they have that modern touch to them to really get people involved. And so this initiative basically allows people to participate in a very statewide effort. And so as part of the iNaturalist app, we invite people to show us what they're seeing out there and create this set of community scientists, which I've mentioned a couple of times because this does go across quite a few programs. This did launch in March. And so we are still collecting data and seeing what's out there. Currently, we're in our Forever Forest campaign. And so we work together with a group called Wild Spaces and Resilient Forest Coalition. And so what we're advocating for is wildfire management with a focus on ecological health. And so this campaign is trying to create a dialogue with Californians about the qualities of a healthy forest ecosystem. And so how we're doing it is it's a two-way street where we're connecting people and teaching them about forest health, but we're also introducing advocacy with policies and legislations that pertain to fire. And how we're doing it is driving this dialogue by using art. And so it's a Forever Forest art contest. I think it's this week. I think on Monday is the last day to submit if anybody wants to submit. But we have these beautiful pieces of art coming in, which, you know, we invite Californians to explore, reflect on, and express their connections to forests in their communities. So if you go to any of our social media on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see some of these pieces of art and just be blown away. And it's just another way to engage, right, with the community and show them that we care in many ways, and that includes with art. This is our 360 garden tour, an example of it. I highly suggest you go to our website and explore this because it's mind-blowing what 360 tours can be. We are using, 360 virtual journey using high-quality technology and virtual editing software and stuff. I have no clue how it works. But the thing is, you go to this website and you can click around and really look around in a 360 view. And anywhere you see these little flowers on the screen here, you can click on and it'll tell you more about that plant. So we did 10 gardens for our Native Plant Week, which I forgot to mention. We do Native Plant Week in April. And so we launched that, and now they live on the website, and people can access them and learn more about a garden and really see what a native plant garden can look like when it's mature. And so I invite you all to check it out because to me, it's mind-blowing what you can do with technology and for accessibility for those who may not be able to go to a garden tour or may have trouble getting out of the house. This is a great way to show them demonstration gardens. So we're going to keep those on there and just kind of show people what a native plant garden could be. I'm going to go into publications, talk a little bit about our magazines. So we do put out a Flora magazine that's quarterly, and then our Fremontia magazine, which we're actually changing the name. And this magazine is more science-based. And so if you become a member, you get both of these magazines in the mail, where the Flora magazine is a little more fun, a little more current topics, a lot of different information, something you can put on your coffee table, as well as our journal, our Fremontia, previously called Fremontia Journal. Beautiful pictures. And so these are two of the magazines that they've gone through different changes over the years, but you can see they're very striking with their covers and the colors and the imagery we choose to use. And the stories in there are really great. So we got the Flora for, just everyone to read. And then the previously called Fremontia, where a lot of science based. And so we talked about genetics. One of our next issues will have a lot of information on plant genetics and restoration, and the science behind all of that. And I forgot to mention, we are putting out a Wildflowers of California book. And this is a collaboration with Timber Press. And this is really a layperson's field guide. But if you've seen a Timber Press book, they're very accessible, they're very colorful, they're very beautiful. And, this will really allow people to access a guide at your local REI store or at a state or national park gift shop. And so we hope that this is, another way to introduce people to California native plants, and especially wildflowers, which is what people notice first. So we do have our conservation program, and I'm almost done here. My two last programs are conservation, and just wanted to mention that we do have some different subcommittees. And I do see a question, is the Flora digital? Yes, the Flora is digital and accessible. So I'm going to talk about conservation, and we do have a conservation group, and basically what they do is they focus on protecting rare plants and the places that those plants live in. And so they deal a lot with litigation. I won't get too into the litigation, but we are actively involved in multiple lawsuits for imperiled habitats. And so we actually did succeed in one of these lawsuits against a Centennial project, which is in Los Angeles County. And this was construction of an entirely new city, 12,000 acres of land, and home to some of the finest native grassland and wildflower habitats in the state. You may have seen this as you drive over the 5 freeway, over the Grapevine. It's that area to the right. And so on a great year, you can see this for miles and miles, even from the freeway. You can see this beautiful splash of color. So that, that project has been put on hold or potentially stopped. And we do actively do litigation where it seems appropriate. Something we're putting out is a conservation advocacy toolkit. And so go back here. And so this toolkit is meant for our chapter leadership, for our members to use. It's basically a tool focused on providing information to our members that may need to engage on projects being evaluated under different permitting processes or laws. And so in California, we have CEQA, which is a California Environmental Quality Act that projects have to go through. So it allows people to comment and give their input on projects that may affect them. So this toolkit is going to be basically a searchable database that people can look at different comment letters and how to write a comment letter, and basically show you a step-by-step on how to get involved in the process, so that you do have a voice and you do have the possibility of saving maybe a wild place like this that has important ecological value. So we hope to have that this year on our website. It's going to be a toolkit, but we're also going to have an instructional video. And I think it's by the end of the summer that should be out by one of our interns that is putting that out. So it's a great program, great project. We have an IPA program, not the IPA, the beer, but the IPA is important plant areas. And what what we're doing with it is, it's basically, you know, to save something, you have to know it exists, right? And so this goes along with some of the previous programs, right? And I know it seems obvious, but it's not so simple to save something, to know where it's at. And so, you know, in California, we've had a rich history of botanical exploration, but millions of acres remain a mystery. And so even on land that is familiar, what grows at the time of one biological assessment may not be detectable 5, 10, even 25 years later. And so this IPA program, Important Plant Areas Program, these are the places that in California, which are crucial to the conservation of the state's botanical heritage. So it's not saying that other areas are not important, but these are particularly important to conservation. So we are, once again, mapping all of California and then running models to see which areas are should be higher priority than others. And so this goes down into Baja, and I think I forgot to mention that CNPS goes down into Mexico because we are looking at the California Floristic Province, which extends down into Mexico. You know, and so we actually created an IPA map for Baja, in our Baja chapter. And so this is available online because it's been completed. Back to that BIOS website, we have it on there. And, you know, this is translated to Spanish as well as English. And so this is going to be a toolkit basically for those down in Baja to protect land that is really ecologically important. So right now we're working on the South Coast ranges, which is where I'm at. And our staff is doing an amazing job using GIS and modeling software to show which areas are the most important based on experts in the field. And so I was in those meetings because I know my area intimately, and people from Bakersfield are in the Bakersfield meetings, and people from Reading are in the Reading meetings, and everyone's invited to the table to give their input on where the most important plants are, or populations, or rare plants exist or may have been seen 10 years ago. All that info is taken into consideration for this. And so we were lucky enough to receive another grant to continue this work and finish mapping California, which is huge. I remember when I came into CNPS, you know, we had gaps on this map, and you can see here, I mean, most of it's funded, some of it's completed, some of it's in process. It's pretty amazing because California is huge. So I'm happy to share that info. And our conservation program does work back on that legislative advocacy component. And so we're hoping this bill does pass. With the pandemic, it was stalled a little, but now it's back on the table, and we hope it passes the finish line and becomes law, because it would be the first such piece of legislation aimed at plant protection, right? And you know, it's one thing to take one plant if you find it on the ground, but these are mass scale organized poaching campaigns that we're trying to understand more about. So we really want to make sure that there's something behind it so that we can stop that. And so that's our beautiful Dudleya right there. And I'll leave you with that and just, you know, revisit that, you know, our programs, our conservation, education, gardening, rare plant science, vegetation science, and so much more. And, you know, it all overlaps. We are heavily volunteer based. Amazing staff, amazing chapters. And so if you know anyone in California, or if you're ever visiting California, get involved with your local chapter, come to one of our meetings. They're all in digital form at the moment. So you can join us from Texas. And if you go to our website, you can see all the different webinars going on, all the different Zoom meetings going on, and you can get involved, and we'll send you the link, and we'd love to have you. So I want to thank you for having me. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but thank you so much.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. To use iNaturalist options.
Yes. And so we do have a couple projects on the iNaturalist app. So if you go to projects, you can search under CNPS and you'll see those projects, and you could join in. And even if you just want to voyeur into it and watch what people are doing and see what observations they've had or what pictures they may have taken, you're welcome to do so. And if you're familiar with the iNaturalist app, pictures get vetted and people correct each other if the plant is ID'd wrong, and it's a great learning experience for everyone. So I encourage you to use it if you're not familiar with it. It's a fun way to learn and document as well what you're seeing out there.
Okay, and then in doing these observations that you're dealing with rare plants, and the question came in, are you concerned about plant thieves taking rare plants?
So I'm hyper paranoid, and I definitely am. And so what's interesting on the iNaturalist app is you can skew the data when it is a rare plant. And so it won't show exactly where it's at for your average person looking on the website, but you do have moderators on there that are watching this stuff, and they do have the data, and it is very specific data that can be shared across the appropriate avenues, and people doing research and people working for different groups. They have access to the data, and we trust them, right? But yeah, we don't want rare plant thieves going out there. And so you can skew the data with the iNaturalist app, and we are very careful with who we share this data with. But it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if people don't know where these plants are, you can't protect them. But you also you want to protect the plants by not letting everyone know where they're at. And people might go out and pick a flower that is rare. So it's a tough one. But with that app that we're using for the community, there are ways to go about keeping things somewhat secret.
Cris,
Okay.
this is Bill Hopkins, and I was wondering about your publications. Do you publish, does the CNPS publish anything themselves, or do you go through, I noticed for one, the Wildflower book, you're working with Timber Press.
So we have published some books on our own. I believe the Manual of California Vegetation was published by us. We're kind of phasing out of that publication CNPS fully, putting things out there, because it is very costly and the returns aren't big. And so the investment is big. And so we've learned that partnering with different publishers is the best way to go. And so we will raise money for different publications and assist the writers and do the whole thing. But we're really kind of moving away from that CNPS being a publisher, because that we're not book publishers. There's people that are more skilled at that than we are.
That's good. We were thinking about whether or not to publish a book ourselves, and so that's why I was asking.
Yeah. So the what did I say? It's called the Wildflowers of California book that's currently in the works is a partnership with the publisher, another publisher, and we found that it's the best way to go. They have better resources.
What about we have a question about your structure. Do your chapters have their own EIN numbers and file their own 990s, or do you have a centralized structure with all under one umbrella?
Yeah, so we are all under one umbrella. We're kind of unique in that way. So we all use the same EIN. And so it's a lot of work for our accounting department, but it keeps things cleaner. And so we submit all the paperwork at the end of the year together and try to keep, bank accounts to a limit, just kind of keep things tight and clean, because as you know, volunteers come and go, and it can get a little tricky if someone takes certain information with them and, inadvertently disappears. And now you have a bank account that's hard to access, or you have numbers that are hard to put together. So we found that our accountant department keeps it nice and tight, but it also means that chapters have to report things consistently and also have a good bookkeeper in their board position, right?
Right.
So, yeah. And so every chapter has a representative. We have something called a chapter council that meets quarterly, and the chapter council kind of makes decisions on behalf of their chapters. And so that's something we also do that's kind of unique. And so in our bylaws, the chapter council has certain things that they may vote on, and then they work together with the board of directors and staff to get some of our administrative things done.
How many people do you have on your staff?
So right now we are currently in hiring mode, and so I know we're in the 30s. We're over 30 people. I think we have 2 or 3 positions up on our website, and it's increasing. Some of those positions are part-time because we have our field season, and so those positions are only during the field season, and then they typically come back the following season and go out and do some nice botanizing out in the field.
And so do you receive a lot of grants or donations, or are you able to finance everything through dues, or a lot of it through dues, or?
So actually our dues, I'd have to look at our financials, but they don't cover a lot. I think they cover the perks of being a member, which is you get the magazines, you get some, a sticker and things like that, because we do have different rates for students and for a limited income. So we do have a lot of private donations and a lot of grants that we're running with. And so in the last couple of years, we've really worked to get more grants for specific projects that align with a lot of the work that a lot of agencies are doing within the state.
Great. We have our own president of our society here in the meeting also, Kim Conroe. Do you have any questions, Kim?
Hi, thank you, Bill. I just wanted to thank you for this wonderful presentation. It's very enlightening, and you have so many interesting programs. I'm overwhelmed at the moment. I'm gonna have to watch this again. We are recording. So I just thank you for coming to talk to us. And I'd like to talk to you some more, maybe privately, about some questions that I have about how you structure your organization.
Great. Yeah, and it's my pleasure. I've heard about the Native Plant Society of Texas, and it's great to connect with the sister group. And if you think about it, I mean, we're in a sense regionally connected, and so there may be ways for us to work together. And we'd love to have you all at our conference next year.
Oh, great idea. And was it going to be a virtual conference?
I think it will be both in person and virtual. But we'll see what happens by next year, but it looks that way.
Okay, we have some of the same kinds of programs and some sort of the same kinds of ideas, although ours are not nearly as big or comprehensive as yours. But I can see in our own organization some of the seeds of the similar types of programs. But it's interesting to see how extensive yours is by comparison to our organization, which is much smaller.
Yeah, I have a question about this. I mean, you have so many programs and so large. I was wondering how you maintain continuity of those programs with the volunteer organization. With so many staff, do certain staff members have responsibility for certain of these initiatives and programs?
I think the question was, do certain staff have responsibility for some of the initiatives and programs?
Yes.
Yes. So, our society has shifted from being minimally staffed to being, to having a nice full office. And so most of these programs are run by staff with support from volunteers at this point, where it may have been very different 20 years ago. And it's a very collaborative approach between staff and volunteers. And we have weekly meetings on projects because volunteers really do support the staff on a lot of the initiatives. But at this point, staff has the capabilities to write grants, to manage their programs, their budgets, and then we go out and help them as needed. Which I'll say that it's great, right? Because a couple years ago, I'd be presenting many presentations in a week, and it's great to have staff to really fill into those positions because they are living CNPS, where we are assisting and volunteering as we can. And so I'm still a volunteer, and I appreciate staff because we have very talented staff that are highly capable of doing amazing work, as you can see from the presentation.
I know you're really busy, Chris. Appreciate you taking time to put this together for us, and certainly taking time out of your day time out of your afternoon to be with us here this evening. We appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and check out the website and if you want to learn more and to contact us. Thank you.